All right, let's jump right in. When you think about India's borders, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? For a lot of us, it's probably a couple of key countries and some very famous, very tense front lines. But the real story is so much more complex, and honestly, way more interesting than you might think. So today, we're going to take a tour of a truly complex frontier.
So let me ask you a question right off the bat. Just take a second to think about it. How many countries does India actually share a border with? We're talking land and sea. What's your first guess? 6? Maybe 7 or 8?
The answer is actually a surprising 11. That's right, 11. India has a neighborhood of 11 different nations, and that number, well, it goes a long way in explaining why its foreign policy and security are some of the most intricate in the entire world.
And this is really the heart of what we're talking about today. India's borders, they're not just lines on a map, no way. They are living, breathing histories. On one end, you have some of the most militarized zones on the planet, and on the other, you've got completely open crossings where people literally just walk back and forth every single day.
So, our tour is going to start on the western front lines. This is where the stories are really etched in conflict and tension. We're talking about the borders with Pakistan and China.
Okay, so first things first, let's clear up a really common point of confusion. The entire India-Pakistan boundary is not the line of control, or the LOC. There's a huge difference. The official, agreed-upon boundary is the Radcliffe Line. That's the recognized international border. The LOC, on the other hand, is a totally different beast. It's a de facto military line that was born out of conflict in the disputed territory of Kashmir.
And if you look at how the LOC came to be, it's really a timeline of conflict. It started out as a temporary ceasefire line back in 1949. But then, after another war in 1971, the Shimla Agreement basically made it more permanent, renaming it the Line of Control. So this isn't a line that was drawn by surveyors. It was literally forged in battle. Now, if we move north, the border with China is just as complicated. The core of the problem really boils down to competing historical maps that were drawn up during the colonial era. So out in the west, China controls this huge, high-altitude desert called Aksai Chin, which India also claims. Then, further east, the border is supposed to follow something called the McMahon Line. But China has never accepted it because it was an agreement made with Tibet way back in 1914, not with them. It's a frontier that's really just defined by these old, unresolved arguments.
All right, let's change gears and head east, because over here, the picture is completely different. The Eastern Corridor reveals a totally different kind of border relationship, one that's really built on friendship and some pretty unique arrangements.
It is a night and day difference from the west. India's borders with Nepal and Bhutan are almost entirely open. People can cross back and forth freely for work, to see family, for trade, all without these super strict controls. These are what you call porous borders, and they reflect some really deep historical and cultural ties.
And the border with Myanmar has another really fascinating setup. It's called the free movement regime. See, the thing is, when the British drew the borderline, they basically sliced right through villages and split up entire communities. So the FMR was created to allow tribes on either side to travel 16 kilometers into the other country without needing a visa. It's all about preserving those deep family and cultural connections.
And then you have the incredible story of the India-Bangladesh border. Until pretty recently, it was one of the most complex borders in the world. Get this, there were tiny pockets of India completely inside Bangladesh, and tiny pockets of Bangladesh completely inside India. It was a humanitarian and logistical nightmare. So in 2015, after decades of talks, they did something brilliantly simple. They just swapped them. India gave Bangladesh 111 enclaves and got 51 back, finally solving this massive puzzle.
Okay, so far we've been on land. But India's neighborhood story doesn't just stop at the coastline. The country actually shares maritime boundaries with 7 different nations, and each one has its own set of challenges and agreements.
Let's look at just a few examples. With Pakistan, there's a marshy estuary called Sur Creek that's been a point of contention for decades. With Sri Lanka, the issue is usually about fishing rights around a tiny, uninhabited island. But hey, there are success stories too. With Bangladesh, there was a dispute over an island that kept disappearing with the tides, and they finally got it all settled through international arbitration back in 2014.
So let's put all the pieces together. We've gone from the high-altitude battlegrounds of the Himalayas all the way down to the quiet maritime channels of the Indian Ocean. We've seen just how incredibly diverse India's frontiers really are. And here they are, all 11 of them. You've got 7 neighbors that share a land border: Pakistan, Afghanistan, China, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, and Myanmar. And then you have 7 that share a maritime border. No, wait, you're thinking that's 14. Well, 3 of those countries, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Myanmar, share both land and sea borders with India. The other maritime-only neighbors are Sri Lanka, the Maldives, Indonesia, and Thailand.
So if there's one crucial point to take away from all this, it's that India's borders are a whole spectrum. They range from hostile and heavily guarded to friendly and completely open. And every single one of them is a product of a long and complicated history, a history that continues to shape the entire region today.
Which leaves us with one final big question to think about. When your neighborhood is this diverse, and you've got both close friends and geopolitical rivals right next door, how do you manage it all? How does a nation balance that constant need for security with all the benefits of openness across such an incredible, varied set of frontiers?